With us now is Jeffrey Goldberg, national correspondent for The Atlantic. Early this year, he interviewed President Obama for a cover story about his foreign policy doctrine. Welcome.
Thank you.
Is this perhaps a turning point for the Clinton campaign in terms of the way she ridiculed Donald Trump?
Right. It absolutely is. Yesterday was pivotal. She decided that this is not a traditional campaign, and therefore she's not going to take the traditional approach to a candidate. Yesterday's speech was not really a foreign policy speech. It was more like a psychiatric indictment of her opponent. And that is fairly unprecedented, certainly unprecedented in June. The question to me is, we're only in June. Where does this thing go over the next 5 months? When you go nuclear yesterday, where does it go?
What do you think? It was a point-by-point indictment using his own words as evidence against him.
I think she quoted him 41 separate times, using his words against him.
And the idea that he is unfit to command, to be commander-in-chief.
Right.
And control the nuclear codes.
Right. I think that what she's going to do over the next 5 months is keep hammering that point home, that this man is not mentally stable. That's why we're in this unprecedented moment. I mean, this wasn't, usually, this is the interesting thing to me, usually in a campaign, she would come out and give a foreign policy speech and say, he's an isolationist, and she would say, she wants to use the military too much, or you're too liberal, you're too conservative. Here was a candidate saying, I am sane, and he is insane. That was the frame, and that, I can't remember. In the 64 race, you had a little bit of that, the Goldwater LBJ, but this was already dialed up.
Way beyond that.
We're already dialed way beyond that.
And what do you think, Jeff, that the Clinton campaign is hoping will come out of it? Because she certainly seemed to want to provoke him, and normally when he's provoked, as he says, I strike back.
Right. Well, this is the thing. I think there are a number of things were happening there. It was a foreign policy speech. It was, here's what he's done. It was an attempt to frame him as mentally unfit for office, but it was also an attempt to goad him into saying something irretrievably bad.
Like what?
Like what?
Well, I can't. This is a family-friendly show. I'm not going to go where he can go. But I think that the goal is to get him so angry that he says something that reminds voters or tells voters that this
really
guy's
is a
not
good
fit.
question. What do we mean by irretrievably? Because we have thought he's gone there before, and it never turns out
that's
to
why
be.
we're all in deep water here. We're in the deep end of the pool. And we as journalists and as people who cover politics, we haven't really seen this yet. And so I don't know where you go that's too far. But I think the goal here is to get him to make a mistake.
She laid out that, as you said, 41 different points, and she then sums up the speech and says, now imagine Donald Trump sitting in the Situation Room making life or death decisions on behalf of the United States. Imagine him sending whether to spend your spouses or children into battle. Imagine if he had not just had his Twitter account at his disposal when he's angry, but America's entire arsenal.
Right. I mean, that.
So they are conjuring, it seems that they're trying to conjure up an image of this man in the White House.
Look, this is the Goldwater. This is the
Goldwater ad.
This is the LBJ play. LBJ told the voters in 1964 that Goldwater will cause a nuclear war that will kill your children.
And they did an ad that showed a nuclear explosion.
The famous Daisy explosion.
Only aired once.
And you've been talking to the Clinton team. What do you think what went on behind the scenes that they said, we got to change our strategy and tactics here?
She really wanted to do this. And by the way, if you watch the speech, she was having a good time doing that, finally unleashing this. But I think they realized that they're in a non-conventional campaign against a non-conventional, very smart foe.
Another different question.
And that, we're going to do this differently than we would have if we were running against Marco Rubio or Jeb Bush.
Is it a turning point because finally this is going to be a contest of ideas and not about ad hominem attacks?
I saw fewer ideas than I did see ad hominem attacks.
It was more ridicule than policy.
Like I said, this was psychiatric analysis in the guise of a foreign policy speech.
How is she different from President Obama in terms of her foreign policy? What does she want to do?
Well, look, she in many ways is the hawk in this race, right? She is much more hawkish, has more of a bias toward action than President Obama. Trump, the hard thing for Hillary, and this goes to your question too, the hard thing for her is that he's coming at her Trump is coming at her from the left and the right simultaneously. You know, she's weak and she uses the military too much. And so this is why I think she's trying to run, you know, kind of run around that and deal with him and deal with the issues of stability and temperament rather than policy. But yeah, she's definitely on the spectrum. She's much more of an interventionist, much more of a great power person than Obama, and in a different way than Trump.
Well, it is very interesting to watch. You will give us that, won't you, Jeff?
It's like a 5-car pileup. You keep watching even though you don't want to.
Jeffrey Goldberg, so great to have you here.
Thanks.